The shuttle's hull groaned under the intense pressure of the atmosphere, a chaotic mix of storms, fire, and gases strong enough to melt flesh. Hale braced himself in the crash harness, staring out the viewport at the orange and red inferno swirling below. His throat felt tight, hands clenched into fists, and yet, despite it all, a smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. "They sent me to die," he whispered to himself, feeling the surge of adrenaline sharpen his senses. "But let's see who thrives in this hell." The shuttle shuddered violently as it descended into the atmosphere of Kaon 7, known across the galaxy as the most hostile planet ever discovered. It was a death sentence for prisoners and exiles alike, a wasteland where not a single life form was supposed to survive. Yet here he was, thrust into the maelstrom on purpose. He had been condemned, of course. The ruling at the Grand Galactic Tribunal was unanimous. Lucas, a former captain of the Earth Federation, had outwitted them all during the war, delivering victory after victory. But his success had made enemies powerful ones. When the wars ended and peace treaties were signed, those same enemies lobbied to have him declared a rogue element, dangerous to the stability of the new order. In the end, Hale was too unpredictable for peace. They didn't even bother with a trial. Instead, they shipped him to Kaon 7, a planet that chewed up and spat out the galaxy's worst criminals. No one survived here for more than a few weeks, at least according to the files he'd seen. The radiation storms alone could fry a man's nervous system if the molten surface didn't consume him first. Lucas wasn't just anyone. The shuttle slammed down, shaking Lucas in his seat. The fiery atmosphere outside screeched against the reinforced glass, but it held, barely. Lights flickered inside the cockpit as the engines powered down. He unhooked himself from the harness and stood, rolling his shoulders. They ached from the tension, but the smirk on his face had grown broader. "All right, let's see what you've got for me, Kaon 7. The doors hissed open, revealing a hellish landscape bathed in heat and a crimson glow. Geysers of sulfuric gases erupted intermittently from the ground, and jagged rocks jutted from the earth like monstrous teeth. Thick clouds of ash floated across the horizon, obscuring the ever-present storms that raged above. The first thing Lucas noticed was the temperature. His skin instantly began to burn, the air around him nearly too hot to breathe. He pulled the mask from his belt and strapped it over his face, allowing the filtration system to kick in. It wasn't perfect, but it would give him some time before the elements overwhelmed him. He'd need to find shelter soon, though. He moved quickly, surveying the immediate area. There was no vegetation, no sign of life whatsoever, just rocks, ash, and molten rivers. His combat boots sank slightly into the molten earth with each step, the soles designed to withstand the extreme temperatures, but he knew even they had limits. Lucas made his way toward the only feature that stood out in the wasteland, a series of jagged cliffs in the distance, rising like the bones of a long-dead creature. If there was any chance of finding shelter, it would be there. As he approached, something flickered in his peripheral vision, a shadow moving unnaturally fast. He tensed, scanning the horizon. Nothing. Just the constant swirl of ash and heat. He moved on, faster now. The cliffs loomed ahead, and as he neared them, he saw an opening, a cave, dark and yawning. Lucas checked his gear, grabbed the rifle slung over his back, and approached cautiously. The moment he stepped into the shadow of the cave's entrance, the temperature dropped significantly. Still hot, but bearable. He took a deep breath, glad for the temporary reprieve. That's when he noticed the tracks. Footprints. Not human. "Great," Lucas muttered, kneeling to examine them. The prints were large, roughly twice the size of his own, with sharp, claw-like indentations. Whatever had made them was big, and based on the depth of the impressions, heavy. This planet was supposed to be uninhabited. Lucas had read all the reports. Kaon 7 was classified as a Class Z environment, deemed unsuitable for any form of life. Yet the evidence before him said otherwise. There was something out here, and it was large enough to leave deep tracks in the rock. A deep, guttural roar echoed through the cave, shaking the walls. Lucas stood slowly, rifle ready, eyes scanning the darkness ahead. The sound was getting closer. He backed up a few steps, weighing his options. Running back out into the furnace of the planet wasn't ideal, but neither was staying to face whatever was coming. His instincts screamed at him to move, but his training kicked in, forcing him to hold his ground. The ground trembled, and from the shadows emerged a creature unlike anything Lucas had ever seen. Its body was enormous, easily over 15 feet tall, covered in thick, charred scales that glistened in the faint light. Its head was elongated, with a row of sharp, jagged teeth visible even in the gloom. Red eyes locked onto Lucas, narrowing with predatory intent. "Well," he said, leveling his rifle, "you're not in the reports." The creature roared again, charging. Lucas opened fire, a steady burst of plasma rounds hitting the beast square in the chest, but instead of staggering, it seemed to shrug off the impact, its scales absorbing the energy like armor. Lucas cursed under his breath. He rolled to the side, dodging a massive swipe from the creature's clawed hand. The beast was fast for its size, unnervingly so. He fired again, this time aiming for its eyes. One of the shots connected, and the creature howled, stumbling back as black blood oozed from its injured eye. Lucas didn't waste any time. He bolted deeper into the cave, knowing the terrain might give him an advantage. The creature followed, enraged, crashing through the narrow tunnel as it pursued him. Lucas ducked under an overhang of rock, then pulled a small device from his belt, a portable mine. He planted it quickly, then sprinted further down the tunnel. Moments later, the creature rounded the corner, and Lucas hit the detonator. The explosion shook the cave, a burst of heat and fire erupting behind him. Dust and rock rained down, but Lucas didn't stop running. He didn't know if the mine had killed it, but he wasn't about to stick around to find out. The tunnel opened up into a larger cavern, and for a moment, Lucas stopped to catch his breath. His mask was fogging up, the heat starting to penetrate even underground. He had maybe a few more hours before the atmosphere would wear down the filters. Then he heard it. The scrape of claws against rock. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. The creature emerged from the smoke and rubble of the collapsed tunnel, limping slightly but very much alive. Its injured eye was swollen shut, but it still had the other, glowing red with fury. Lucas grimaced, backing up as he fired again, aiming for its legs this time. The plasma bolt sparked off the creature's tough hide, but didn't seem to penetrate deeply enough to cause any real damage. He needed a new plan, fast. His gaze darted around the cavern, searching for anything he could use. The walls were lined with strange, crystalline formations, glowing faintly in the dim light. It was a long shot, but he didn't have many options left. He sprinted toward one of the formations and slammed the butt of his rifle into it. The crystal shattered, releasing a burst of energy that crackled through the air. The creature roared again, but this time, it hesitated. The energy from the crystal seemed to affect it, making it slow down. Lucas's mind raced, piecing together a strategy. He quickly shattered another crystal, then another, each one releasing the same strange energy. The creature's movements became sluggish, its roars less fierce. Lucas grinned. He didn't understand exactly how it worked, but he didn't need to. He just needed to survive. He shattered the largest crystal he could find, and the energy it released caused the creature to stumble, finally collapsing to the ground with a deafening crash. Lucas stood over the beast, panting. Its chest still heaved with shallow breaths, but it wasn't getting up again. Not anytime soon, at least. He wiped the sweat from his brow, staring at the fallen monster. "Looks like I'm not the only one who thrives here." But before he could bask in his victory, a new sound echoed through the cavern, a low, mechanical hum. Lucas tensed, turning toward the source. At the far end of the cavern, a doorway slid open, revealing a group of figures standing in the shadows. They were tall, humanoid, and clad in sleek armor that reflected the glow of the crystals. Lucas narrowed his eyes, raising his rifle again. One of the figures stepped forward, removing its helmet to reveal an alien face, sharp and angular, with glowing blue eyes. It smiled, a cold and calculating expression. "Welcome to Kaon 7," the alien said, its voice smooth and unsettling. "We've been expecting you." Lucas's finger hovered over the trigger, but he hesitated. These weren't mindless beasts, they were intelligent, organized, and far more dangerous than he'd anticipated. The alien who had spoken was still smiling, as though amused by Lucas's resistance. "I don't remember signing up for a welcoming committee," Lucas said, keeping his tone light, masking the tension coiling inside him. "Your arrival was predicted," the alien replied, his glowing blue eyes flickering with something akin to curiosity. "You're not the first they've sent here, but you are the most intriguing." Lucas snorted. "So, you're telling me this place is a trap? That I was brought here for your entertainment?" The alien tilted his head. "Something like that. But it's more than mere entertainment, Captain Hale." Lucas flinched at the mention of his name, though he kept his expression neutral. They knew who he was. How long had they been watching him? And more importantly, what did they want? "I have no interest in being anyone's puppet," Lucas said, taking a step back toward the tunnel he'd entered through. "Ah, but you have no choice," the alien said, his smile widening. "You see, Kaon 7 is more than just a death world. It's a testing ground, a place where only the strong survive. And you, Captain Hale, have proven yourself stronger than most." Lucas didn't like the way this was going. He'd survived a lot in his life, but something about the cold, calculating gaze of this alien made him feel like prey being toyed with. "What do you want from me?" Lucas asked, cutting through the games. The alien's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold intensity. "We want you to join us, Captain, to lead us." Lucas blinked. That wasn't the answer he'd expected. "We are the Dra'keth," the alien continued. "Exiles like you, cast out by the powers that be, left to die on this forsaken planet. But we survived, we thrived, and now we seek to take what is rightfully ours." Lucas's grip tightened on his rifle. "And what's that?" "The galaxy, Captain Hale. We intend to take the galaxy." Lucas exhaled slowly. This just got a lot more complicated. They brought him deeper into the caves, far from the surface storms and radiation, into a hidden base that stretched beneath the ground for miles. The Dra'keth had built a fortress here, using the natural energy of Kaon 7's crystals to power their technology. Lucas couldn't deny the impressive ingenuity. It was a system he'd never seen before, something far beyond the reach of any known species. Their leader, the alien who had greeted him, was named Valon. He explained the history of the Dra'keth as they walked. They had once been a proud and powerful race, rulers of a vast empire. But after a devastating war with the Earth Federation one Lucas had been a part of, they had been defeated, their empire fractured, and their people exiled to the worst corners of the galaxy. Kaon 7 had been their prison, but instead of succumbing to the planet's deadly environment, they had adapted. The crystals that littered the planet were the key, providing energy, protection, and even a way to resist the effects of the planet's toxic atmosphere. Lucas listened, though his mind was racing with thoughts of escape. He wasn't interested in joining some alien rebellion, no matter how impressive their technology was. But he also knew that surviving Kaon 7 alone would be nearly impossible, especially now that he knew the Dra'keth were watching him. Valon led him to a massive chamber at the heart of the base. At its center was a throne, carved from black crystal, and surrounding it were dozens of Dra'keth warriors, their eyes glowing with the same blue light that emanated from the crystals. "This is our council," Valon said, gesturing to the gathered warriors, "and they will decide your fate." Lucas tensed, his gaze sweeping the room. He had fought in some of the galaxy's bloodiest battles, but this felt different. These warriors weren't just soldiers. They were zealots, loyal to a cause that went beyond simple conquest. Valon took his place at the head of the council, looking down at Lucas with a calculating gaze. "You have proven yourself worthy, Captain Hale. You survived the trials of Kaon 7, and you defeated one of the planet's greatest predators. You are strong." Lucas crossed his arms, unimpressed. "Get to the point." Valon's smile returned, though it was colder now. "The point, Captain, is that we need a leader. Someone who understands both the strength of humans and the strategies that have allowed them to conquer half the galaxy. We want you to be that leader." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "And if I say no?" Valon's smile faded. "Then you die. like all the others. Lucas stared at him for a long moment, weighing his options. He didn't trust the Dra'keth, but he also knew that turning down their offer wasn't really an option. Not if he wanted to survive. Fine, Lucas said, his voice flat. I'll play your game. For now. Valon's smile returned, triumphant. Good. You'll see, Captain. In time you'll realize that we are the future. The Dra'keth will rise again, and you will lead us to victory. Lucas didn't respond. He had no intention of leading a rebellion, but for now he would play along. He would bide his time, learn their weaknesses, and when the moment came, he would escape. But as he looked around at the gathered Dra'keth, their glowing eyes watching him intently, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something far more dangerous than even Kaon 7 itself. In the following days, Lucas was integrated into the Dra'keth society. He was given quarters, weapons, and most importantly, access to their technology. The Dra'keth were far more advanced than the Earth Federation had ever anticipated, and Lucas found himself both fascinated and horrified by their capabilities. Their power sources, driven by the planet's unique crystals, could fuel entire fleets for years without refueling. Their cloaking technology made them virtually invisible to any known sensors. It was no wonder the Federation had tried to wipe them out. They were a threat to the entire galaxy. Valon, for his part, kept a close eye on Lucas, testing his loyalty at every turn. But Lucas was careful. He played the part of a willing participant, even offering suggestions on strategy and battle formations. It was clear the Dra'keth respected strength and intelligence, and Lucas used that to his advantage. But he never forgot his ultimate goal: escape. One evening, as he stood in his quarters, staring at the view of the fiery storms outside, a soft knock came at the door. Lucas tensed, his hand instinctively going to the plasma pistol at his side. "Come in," he called, his voice low. The door slid open, and a figure stepped inside. It was not Valon, but another Dra'keth, smaller and less intimidating than the warriors Lucas had met. Her features were softer, and her blue eyes glowed with a gentler light. "My name is Lyra," she said, her voice quiet. "I am part of the council, though I do not often speak." Lucas regarded her warily. "What do you want?" Lyra glanced around the room, as if checking for eavesdroppers before stepping closer. "I know why you're here, Captain Hale," she whispered. "And I know you're planning to escape." Lucas's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his face neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." Lyra smiled faintly. "You can't fool me, Captain. I've seen how you watch the others, how you study our systems. You're looking for a way out." Lucas's hand tightened around his pistol, but he didn't draw it. "And if I am?" Lyra took another step closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can help you." Lyra's offer hung in the air like the faint scent of sulfur that seemed to cling to every breath on Kaon 7. Lucas didn't trust her, how could he? But she'd caught him off guard. He stared into her glowing blue eyes, trying to read her expression. Her soft features were still alien, but there was something undeniably human in the way she held herself, cautious, guarded. "Help me," Lucas repeated, his voice edged with disbelief. "Why?" She glanced at the door again, her movements furtive. "The Dra'keth have plans far worse than what Valon is telling you. He doesn't want you as a leader, Captain Hale. He wants you as a pawn, a tool to rally the remnants of our people and push them into a war that will destroy everything, including your own kind. You're a symbol to them. A human captain who has bested Kaon 7 and lived to tell the tale." Lucas exhaled slowly, forcing his mind to clear the noise. He had known from the start that Valon's offer wasn't what it seemed, but to hear it confirmed by one of their own stirred a deep sense of urgency within him. "You're saying he's using me as propaganda?" Lyra nodded, her voice gaining strength. "Once he has you at his side, he'll mobilize. Valon is obsessed with revenge. He wants to rebuild the Dra'keth Empire at any cost, and that includes wiping out the Federation. With you as his human champion, he thinks he'll be able to rally not just the Dra'keth, but other exiles, pirates, anyone with a grudge against Earth or its allies." "That's a hell of a leap," Lucas said, narrowing his eyes. "You want me to believe you're against him? That you care about stopping Valon?" Lyra's expression hardened. My people are survivors, Captain Hale, and I would rather we survive by rebuilding, by finding a place for ourselves in the galaxy. But Valon? He would burn the galaxy to ash if it meant vengeance. If he succeeds, we'll be back to where we started, exiled, hunted, dying. Lucas crossed his arms, sizing her up. He'd spent years in war, learning to read people, and right now everything about Lyra screamed desperation, but not deception. She was telling the truth, or at least her truth. What's your plan? He asked. Lyra's gaze flickered with relief. She stepped closer, lowering her voice even more. There's a way off this planet, but it's not through the main base or the ships you've seen. The Dra'keth keep a secret evacuation vessel, a last resort ship that can bypass the crystal shielding and the storms. It's hidden in the lower caverns. In case we ever needed to abandon the base, we can use it. Lucas's eyes narrowed. We. Lyra's expression softened. Yes, you'll need my help to get to it. The lower caverns are guarded, and only council members have the access codes. Lucas shook his head. This is sounding too convenient. Why now? Why help me after all this time? Lyra's eyes met his, a flicker of something raw and honest passing through them. Because I've been waiting. Watching. You're not like the others Valon's tried to recruit. You don't want to be here, and you're not loyal to him. I've watched you study the systems. And I know you're looking for a way out. I'm giving you that chance because it's the only way to stop Valon before it's too late. Lucas stared at her for a long moment, weighing his options. His instincts screamed at him to trust no one, to keep playing his cards close to his chest. But there was something about the urgency in her voice, the way her eyes flicked nervously toward the door. She was afraid, and fear was a powerful motivator. All right, he said finally, I'll play along. But if you're lying to me. I'm not, Lyra interrupted, her tone firm. I want to stop Valon as much as you do. Lucas nodded, his mind already working through the logistics. When do we move? Tonight, Lyra said, when the guards change shifts. I'll guide you through the lower caverns, but once we're in, you'll need to disable the central power grid to prevent the alarms from going off. It won't be easy, but it's our best shot. Lucas's hand tightened around the grip of his plasma pistol. I've faced worse odds. The hours passed in tense silence. Lucas remained in his quarters, mentally preparing for what lay ahead. His instincts screamed at him to stay alert, to not trust anyone fully, but at the same time, he knew that he was running out of options. The Dra'keth were not a force to be underestimated, and Valon's plans would send the galaxy spiraling into chaos if they weren't stopped. For now, Lyra was the best chance he had. When the time came, she slipped into his quarters like a shadow, her movements quick and silent. It's time. Lucas grabbed his gear and followed her out. The corridors of the Dra'keth base were eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of the crystal-powered generators that kept the entire operation running. Lyra led him through a series of winding tunnels, away from the main compound and into the depths of the lower caverns. They reached a sealed door, guarded by 2 Dra'keth soldiers in black armor. Lyra stepped forward, her hand outstretched. I'll take care of them. She approached the guards, her voice low and commanding as she spoke in their language. Lucas couldn't make out the words, but whatever she said had the desired effect. The guards nodded, stepping aside and allowing her access to the control panel beside the door. Lyra keyed in a series of codes, and the door hissed open. Lucas followed her through, his heart pounding. So far, so good. Beyond the door, the cavern opened up into a massive chamber lined with ancient machinery and massive power conduits that hummed with energy. In the center of the chamber was the ship, a sleek, black vessel that looked like it could punch through a star. It was small, but powerful, designed for speed and stealth. This is it, Lyra whispered. We just need to disable the power grid. Lucas moved toward the central console, his fingers flying over the controls. He'd spent enough time studying Dra'keth systems to know how they worked, but even so, the sheer complexity of the machinery in front of him was daunting. Sweat beaded on his brow as he bypassed the security protocols, shutting down the power grid one section at a time. Almost there, he muttered under his breath. Just as he finished, a loud alarm blared through the cavern, the sound reverberating off the walls like a death knell. Lucas spun around to see Valon standing at the entrance, flanked by a squad of heavily armed Dra'keth soldiers. His glowing blue eyes were filled with fury. "You betrayed me," Hale Valon spat, his voice venomous. "Did you really think you could escape?" Lyra stepped forward, her eyes hard. "I'm the one who betrayed you, Valon. This madness has gone on long enough." Valon's gaze shifted to her, cold and calculating. "You always were weak, Lyra. A traitor to your own people." Lyra's hand trembled slightly, but she stood her ground. "Our people deserve a future, not endless war." Valon's face twisted into a snarl. "Then you will die with him." Lucas didn't wait. He drew his plasma rifle and opened fire, the cavern erupting into chaos. The Dra'keth soldiers returned fire, their weapons blazing as they advanced. Lucas ducked behind a console, taking out 2 of them with precise shots. Lyra fought alongside him, her movements quick and deadly, but they were outnumbered. "Get to the ship," Lucas shouted over the din of battle. Lyra nodded, sprinting toward the vessel as Lucas laid down covering fire. Valon's soldiers were relentless, their armor absorbing most of the plasma blasts, but Lucas aimed for the weak points, joints, exposed flesh. One by one, they fell, but more kept coming. Lucas backed up toward the ship, firing as he went. Valon, meanwhile, strode through the chaos with a grim determination, his eyes locked on Lucas like a predator stalking its prey. "You think you can stop me?" human Valon snarled, raising his weapon. "You are nothing." Lucas's smirk was all teeth. "Funny, I was about to say the same thing." Before Valon could fire, Lucas grabbed a pulse grenade from his belt and lobbed it at the base of the cavern's power conduits. The explosion was deafening, and the entire chamber shook as the conduits overloaded, sending arcs of energy crackling through the air. Valon stumbled, momentarily blinded by the blast. Lucas didn't waste the opportunity. He sprinted toward the ship, leaping aboard just as the doors sealed shut behind him. Lyra was already in the pilot's seat, her hands flying over the controls. "Hold on," she shouted as the ship roared to life. Lucas strapped himself in as the vessel shot forward, tearing through the cavern and out into the open air. The storms outside raged, but the ship's advanced shielding held firm, cutting through the atmosphere like a blade. As they ascended, Lucas looked back at the base below, now nothing more than a distant speck. "Is it over?" Lyra asked quietly, her voice trembling slightly. Lucas leaned back in his seat, his heart still pounding from the adrenaline. "For now." Lyra glanced at him, her expression somber. "Valon won't stop. He'll find another way." Lucas stared out at the stars as they broke through Kaon 7's atmosphere, his jaw set. "Then we'll be ready for him. But for now, we've got our own future to think about." Lyra nodded, her eyes softening as they left the hell of Kaon 7 behind. Lucas closed his eyes, exhaustion finally catching up with him. He'd been sent here to die, but he'd done more than survive. He had thrived. And now, as they sped away from the most dangerous planet in the galaxy, Lucas Hale was free. For now.